So how exactly do you join the Coeur d'Alene speech and debate team? So I'm going to write this down as a very step-by-step process to make it very clear on how exactly you join. But once you start doing this process, it'll be fairly normalized and should come second nature. So the first and number one step is obviously to sign up for squad resources, the contact communication form. And so once we get that information, we can go ahead and add you to the squad resources. Then you go to those resources and you turn in the procedural paperwork, the waivers and liability forms, plus the rules and expectation documents. After that, you sign up for a specific tournament. You find the form, you fill it out, and you email it to the front office. Then you attend practices, workshops, intramurals, and other events, primarily practices to help you prepare for that tournament. You maintain academic and disciplinary standing. You attend that tournament. You have fun at that tournament. You pay the fees afterward when billed by the school. And then you repeat starting back at step 3, and you keep signing up for other tournaments and going more so into the team. And so let's kind of break these down a little bit in more detail, but this is a rough outline of what we're going to talk about. First is squad resources. So on the squad, we have everything on the cloud, which means it's all on a Google Drive or on Slack. And so you're going to fill out this Google form. There's a link here. There's a link provided by we emailed. There's also probably a link on the YouTube page. And so you fill out this form. You then wait approximately 1 day for us to process it. It's not an automated process. I got to just check the form. Once it's automated, then if it's a couple days, it's halfway through the year, I might not be checking it every single moment. So if I miss you a day or two, please send me an email to remind me that you've submitted it, and so I can go and check and add you through it. You should join our Google Drive folder. At that point, you're going to get added to it. It's going to send you an email link saying to join. Once you're in there for your event, you might ask for a personal work product folder that you then have editing privileges over, and you can add all of your own evidence, cases, and research you do. Beyond that, you should join our Slack. We have relevant channels for events you can pick as well. And this is how all the communication is going to be done, is going to be primarily through Slack. We're not going to do email unless it involves your parents. If it's going to be student by student, more team by team based, that is going to be through Slack. And so it is very important you have Slack, keep it updated, and primarily, maybe download the app and have it running on your computer. Beyond that, procedural paperwork. And so here's the following that needs to be turned into the front office by email. The email should be on the paperwork, but it is also here if you can't find it. And so you have to turn in the liability waivers. Those are on the Google Drive. You have to turn in our rules and expectations document. And if you're an officer, you got to turn in the officer, same thing. And so it's pretty simple, but you do got to turn this paperwork in before we can put you into a tournament. And so, go through that, read all the stuff, turn it in. And then once you turn in once, you're good for the entire year. And so make sure you get this done before your first tournament, or else we're going to have to remind you. After that, you sign up for tournaments. And so signing up for tournaments, you have to look at the calendar. We'll talk about the calendar a little bit later, but you're going to click a Google sheet that's going to leave a lot of tournaments, 56 plus tournaments. Now, is anyone ever going to go to these tournaments, all these tournaments? No. You find tournaments that are for your event, your skill level, and your weekend availability, and you kind of mix and match. The only requirement to be on the team is to go to one tournament through the whole year. Now, obviously, a lot of students go for more than that. We recommend usually about anywhere between 8 is the number we kind of say is a good gold standard, is if you're going through 8 an entire year, that is great. And so that is why we kind of suggest these are the best 8 per event on the Google Sheet. After you figured out this is a tournament I like and I want to try, turn in the permission slip, fill it in, turn it in. After that, if you want to claim a parent volunteer judge slot, if we have one, there's going to be a form sent out monthly to parents. And so make sure your parents fill that out as soon as possible, as soon as they get sent that form. Beyond that, you then need to turn in a tournament-specific form. So beyond Corey Lane's waiver and liability stuff, a lot of tournaments have waiver and liabilities as well, just for the tournament, and you'll have to turn those in as well, which will be turned in through the similar process. And so after you've signed up for a tournament, what's next? Well, we have practices. We have different types of practices. They're primarily practice for most students called an open practice. These are our after-school online practice sessions that are for primarily JV, novice students, or even low-level varsity students, so that they can get general skills development so they can transition to being an elite varsity member. These are practices that are open for pretty much every grade, 6th through 12th, and any grade can come anytime. Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday from 4:10 to 5:30 p.m. Some days you might end up a little bit earlier than 5:30, but for the most part, depending upon event and time, 5:30 lets you know what it's maximally going to be that day, and you should plan that it could go up to that time. Students don't necessarily come all 3 days a week. The whole goal is supposed to be flexible. You pick which day of the week best fits your schedule and come that day of the week. These do count toward our practice minimum requirements, as talked about in rules and expectations. And these will operate on an event priority model, which means I will pick different days of the week will be my priority, and will be that way the whole year. And so, say for example, Tuesday is my speech priority. Then I will work with what speech students are there that day personally, and for people who are there that day for other events, they will work with more varsity or senior members or work independently. Then on the next day, Wednesday, I'll work on different events. And then on Thursday, different events. That way I'm giving some equal priority to each event one day of the week. Now, it's helpful if you come to when I'm your priority, but you don't have to. As long as you're coming one per week, you are operating within the model. And so this is all meant to be super flexible so you can participate in other extracurricular activities, other things outside school, yet still actively participate in speech and debate. So let's talk about these practice minimums first. Why even have practice? Well, practice does make you more perfect. Now, you might never be perfect, but you can get closer to that perfection, and practice is the way you do that. The first time you make that basketball shot, when you shoot that free throw and make it, you don't say Kobe Bryant or LeBron James never turned around and said, I never need to practice free throws again. I made it once. No, you keep practicing so you get better and better and better. And that's the same thing with practices. And so we do require practice attendance at Corey Lane. The basic rule is that the 4 weeks prior to the tournament, so on the Friday or Saturday the tournament starts, go back the 4 weeks. You have to attend 4 practices total before those 4 weeks. So if we're offering practices 3 times a week, that means 12 total. You had to go to 4 of those 12 opportunities. Ideally, it should average once per week, but for some students, they might take a week off because they're super busy and then go for 2 the next week, where they might wait until right before the tournament and do 3 the week before the tournament, and then 1 the week prior to that, and then that's their 4. And so the goal of that is also to be flexible with practice minimums. How do you fill out practice attendance? That is something that is done through a Google form. We announce a code, or the code is going to be on the Google Drive. It'll be just a digit code written, and we will type that in, and then you just type it in on the form, either the beginning of practice or end of practice, and that fill it out, and that signifies you've been at the form for that time. What are varsity TOC practices? So these are a little bit different. These are during school practice sessions that we have for speech and debate that are for those high-level varsity senior members that are trying to get TOC night talk qualification. They're going to be limited to certain students from 9th to 12th grade who want it and need that help. They're going to occur roughly 3 to 4 times per week during either high school lunch or club flex times. These do not count toward practice minimum attendance requirements, unless if you're in Congress and Parley, that's the one exception. But for other events, you have to go to the open practices for those to count for practice attendance requirements. These operate on an event restricted model, which means whichever day I'm teaching that day is the only event I'm going to allow in. It's the only person I'm going to talk to, only people I'm going to talk to. And so that way it's so that they can get 100% priority and we can just work on, what they're doing on that day. It's only 30 minutes, and so it's going to be flexibly adapted to what students do show up for that particular day, for that particular event needs and those student desires. And so, some people might show up and say they have different needs or desires or what they want to talk about or run through with me that day. And it's going to be very much adapted to what both the students need to get prepared for these tournaments. We also have middle school spotlights. So these aren't quite a full practice session. These are short online after school sessions that are just for middle school students. And the whole goal of these is it's a space 6th through 8th that they can come right after middle school, but before high school is ended. And then they have that guarantee opportunity where there are no high schoolers. They got freedom and they can kind of talk to me. It's going to be a very open forum model where you can ask questions, you can get feedback, or you can just sort of relax for 10, 20 minutes before, the high school, the full on open practice starts. These middle school practice spotlights are not a practice. They're only realistically 20 minutes long, and so they do not count toward practice minimum. So, if you're a middle school student, you need to be coming to those open practices. Now, it does set up nicely that if your open practice is Tuesday, you can just come for the spotlight and stay the whole time. And that would mean cover both the spotlight where you get some individual attention, and then you go into the larger practice for your event. And so these are adapted as well to students who do flexibly show up. We have workshops as well. Workshops are single all-day online practice sessions for speech debates just to prepare for upcoming tournaments. They're open for all students. They only occur a limited number of times on a semester. You should see they're primarily will be on a weekend or a holiday, but primarily weekend. Because we compete in a lot of weekends, we don't necessarily know when they're going to be in advance, and they're going to be planned, adapting per the schedule and when we need them. We do have our first one this weekend, and if you're watching this past this weekend in August 29th, then ignore this, but there will probably be others throughout the semester as well. They operate on a rotation model, which means, I will try to have every event and I'll rotate between events. And if I can hire coaches, provide specific event instruction and improve student-teacher ratios, I will do so. Otherwise, it'll be sort of the varsity members leading it. But these workshops are kind of flexibly adapted to the students that do sign up for it and attend the workshop. And they also serve for more than tournament preparation. These are opportunities for squad-wide bonding and squad-wide diversity discussions, both very core components in a large speech and debate community and at Corey Lane specifically. And so we focus on sort of these communal social elements, and these discussions that are very important to us happen also at these workshops. There's some time dedicated to work those in. And so that is another reason why they're valuable. We also have intramurals, and finally, intramurals are sort of after-school, online, in-house mini tournaments we do, where you, as a Corey Lane student, are competing against other Corey Lane students. They're open primarily to every student, and they're going to only be also a limited number of times semester. Primarily, I'm thinking Friday after school is a good time for them. And these also do not count toward practice attendance minimum. Actually, these do not count toward practice minimum attendance requirements. They might. We'll have to think about it as we go to. I haven't decided that one yet. But they are used by students basically to simulate real rounds. And so if some students can't go to a particular tournament to prepare for a greater tournament, they might say, let's do an intramural instead for a much cheaper amount. And they can then go to the intramural, practice against other Corey Lane students, and then help prepare them so to win maybe one more round when they go to that other tournament, they do a little bit better. That's an outside Corey Lane tournament. And these are also going to be flexibly adapted to the students that sign up and attend. So if only certain events sign up, it's adapted to them. If sometimes, usually in speech, it likes to package a little bit of a mixture of a workshop in it and do both rounds and discussions. And so it really is adapted a little bit to the events and the students that do sign up. So what do these look like? Here's an example of an intramural we did last year. This was primarily middle school only intramural for the class I had, and we had the varsity high school members kind of volunteer to judge, and they judged accordingly, and they did a fantastic job. And so this was them coming into their various Zoom rooms, participating in debates or speech events, and kind of talking about what's going on. And so this is kind of what this ultimately looks like when they're competing at these tournaments. What about at home or sort of other extracurriculars? What about, well, at home, there's zero obligation or rule to do any homework for speech and debate. This is both for my class and for the extracurricular team. I believe strongly in accessibility, and one of the key accessibility components is how much time is it taken away from you outside of the time we make you come. And so we believe that if you sign up for tournaments, you attend practices, and you go to those tournaments, you've done everything you need to be successful in speech and debate. Now, for those who are seeking national, top of the nation success, or they really want to put in significant more, some are inevitably going to put in more work outside of this, and we understand this is going to happen. And so that's okay, and it can be helpful for advanced students, but it's no way a requirement to be on the team and to have success on the team. And so this is something that you should think about a lot, and always make sure you balance your workload. And we believe in a well-rounded student that excels both in speech and debate and outside in speech and debate. And so we try our best, and you can tell with our scheduling and things like that, to be as flexible as possible with you and your schedule. And tournaments, so tournaments is what we're going to talk about. They are competitions for speech and debate where Corey Lane students compete against other students from other schools. They're open all 6th through 12th. Now, they occur many times a semester all throughout the year, but usually Saturdays, Sundays, which you should think about. And these are what we're preparing for. This is what we're going to practices for. This is what we have workshops for, intramurals for, is to prepare you for success at these. There may only be certain events or divisions, certain tournaments, or a limited number of spots at certain tournaments. And so you really need to look at the calendar. You really need to talk to me and to understand it, to pick what you sign up for in advance. There's a due date on the calendar that you need to sign up for in order to have a slot and be considered for the tournament. I can usually accept you a little bit after the due date. The rule of thumb is about a week for a lot of tournaments, but that is not always the case. And so think about turning in your due date as soon as possible. Everything is 100% online this year in speech and debate. And so things ran very successfully last year when they switched to this, and so I expect it's going to be very successful this year as well. It's going to be very efficient. You don't have to spend time commuting across the Bay Area to go to a random high school and then to get commute back at night. You can just wake up and do it from home, and so it'll be a lot easier for you to join and participate in these activities, I think, than what it might have been previously. What do tournaments look like? Well, here's what actual tournaments look like when we went to campuses. This is our debate team on the right, our speech team on the left at Berkeley last year. And so while tournaments won't exactly be in person because of social distancing this year, we will have, of course, lots of similar type of interactions. It's kind of meant to show you, what the team is like as a personality.